This is Abnormal Entertainment.
Cinema Head Cheese, the podcast, is sponsored by Bunny17 Media. Head to bunny17media.com and you can find great comedy books like Kevin Hates Everything, Secondhand Boogers, Brain Farts, and How to Quit Being an Asshole in 5 Easy Steps. So head to bunny17media.com, use the promo code CHC, like Cinema Head Cheese, and get 15% off of your order. Whether it's on sale, it's an ebook, doesn't matter. Go get it, get the discount, and on with the show. Welcome everybody to the Cinema Head Cheese Podshort for the Zen Diaries of Garry Shandling. This is Kevin Moyers, and when I was a kid, I watched stand-up comedy left, right, and center. If it was Evening at the Improv or the A-List or whatever the hell it was, if it was on, I watched it. And it really started when I was about 12, when I really started getting into everything. I saw Carlin for the first time, George Carlin, and he was very influential to me. When I saw Carlin the first time, when that show was over and the credits were rolling at the end, it was What Am I Doing in New Jersey? And it was on HBO. The credits were rolling and I said, I want to do that. I want to be him. And that's pretty relevant to Garry Shandling. Shandling was a guy who was born in Chicago, and his family moved to Tucson, Arizona, which I'm coincidentally about to drive through on my way to El Paso. But he had a brother that was sick and died, an older brother, and died while they were in Tucson. And his parents were really weird with Garry about it because I don't know why, but the weirdness was that they didn't really tell him right away. They wouldn't let him go to the funeral because his mom didn't want him to see her cry, which is weird. So he never really got to properly grieve as a kid over his brother, and that's a shame because that's an important process. I had to take my daughter to my grandfather's funeral a few months ago, and it's an important thing for kids to be able to do because she was very close to him, and you need that time to say goodbye or whatever you need to do. So he never got that, and as you see time go on in his life, that is a major tentpole to all of his difficulties, emotionally and psychologically. So, Judd Apatow put this together. It's a two-parter, and it was on HBO. And he was friends with Garry, but Garry was more or less his mentor. So, to get back to how Carlin relates, when Garry Shandling was, I think, in college, he drove up to Phoenix to see Carlin. He was a huge fan. Had like 4 pages of jokes written down and gave them to Carlin and said, Mr. Carlin, I want to be a comedy writer, and I wrote these jokes. Would you read them and look at them? And, maybe they're jokes you could use or whatever. And Carlin looked at him and said, okay, come back tomorrow. So Shandling was like, oh, okay. And so he drives back to Tucson. Next day, goes back up to Phoenix. And for those that don't know, living here, having been to Tucson many times, from Phoenix It's about an hour and a half to a 2-hour drive. So he did that, 3 hours round trip, 2 days in a row. Second day he comes back, and a bunch of marks were all over the 4 pages. He had things circled, checked, whatever. And he said, okay, this are good. These not so good, but this right here shows your potential. Like, you can do this. This can be your life. And Shandling was like, holy shit, from my idol, George Carlin, I get to hear this. So that's it. He packs it up. He goes to LA to become a comedy writer. And he does. He ends up on Welcome Back, Kotter, Sanford and Son, stuff like that. But as he's going, he, writes one. He's like, okay, well, there's my episode of Sanford and Son. Now what? I want to do something else. And, he was always looking for the next thing. Like, what do I do next? What do I do next? And, he grew his career into stand-up from there. And Judd Apatow was kind of similar to Shandling in reaching out to comics. Like, he when he was in high school and college, he used to call up comedians or talk to them and interview them. And he has all these recordings. So that's kind of interesting. And when he met Shandling's like, all right, he did for Apatow what Carlin did for him, brought him in. So he ended up being a writer on the Grammys. He wrote some jokes for him, and he's like, all right, come on. And Shandling rewrote all the jokes, but still, he got the core of it from Apatow, and he was a writer on the Grammys for him. Then he ended up writing on Larry Sanders' Show, which is one of the greatest shows of all time. No joke. If you haven't watched it and you have HBO Go or HBO Now, just sit there. I burned through 7 seasons in less than a week, and then when it was done, I was like, now what do I do? No, this was becoming a part of my life. It's that good. But when Shandling died, he didn't have any, and it was last year, he didn't have any kids, he didn't have a wife or anything, so Judd Apatow, being, one of his best friends, went through all of these diaries that Shandling kept, and all of this video that he took of Shandling, and stuff he had from HBO and things like that when he worked there, and, he went to NBC, who let him get a bunch of footage from The Tonight Show, which Garry was on plenty and also guest hosted many times. It was him and Leno at one point before Leno completely took that over. And Shandling walked away from it. So it's really interesting to get into a comedian's life. And the only other two, there are a lot of good comedian documentaries, but 2 of my favorites are Mr. Warmth, which is about Don Rickles, and I Ain't Scared of You, which is about Bernie Mac, and those were both put together by their kids. Shandling didn't have kids, but Apatow was the closest he'd ever get to a son, really. And there is so much love put into the making of this documentary, getting into Garry Shandling's life, getting deep. You learn about his struggles with his mother, his struggles with his brother's death, his own legacy, his career. He was in a relationship for a long time, and then where he was engaged and never ended up getting married, had a breakup, had a huge falling out with his longtime manager, lost friends, and 1 or 2, but by his choosing. There's a whole thing. Anytime you see Bob Saget in a documentary, it's dick jokes and how can I make you laugh, but when you see Saget in this, there is a moment because of kind of a pause in their relationship over this manager that Shandling ended up suing, where he kind of let go of Saget, and there's a moment where I'm watching this heartbreaking piece with Bob Saget, and I mean, I'm no joke, tears are rolling down my face. Like, I feel his pain when he's talking about what happened between him and Shandling, and like how he tried to fix it, and it just, like, I'm just dying inside watching it. It was so meaningful. But Apatow did a great thing where he shows text. There are a lot of quiet moments where he's just showing text from the diaries, and like one sentence appears and then the next one does, and you're kind of reading through it, and you see Shandling struggle with depression. You could tell his mom had it big time, and didn't deal with it. His turn to Buddhism, spirituality, and a lot of like trying to find peace throughout. Him fostering other people's careers. Like, he was a huge mentor to so many people, whether it's Sarah Silverman, Kevin Nealon, Sacha Baron Cohen. It's just like people you don't realize he connected to, and he helped grow. So it's interesting, but you do see a little bit of the darkness in him, and not darkness like he's super shitty, but like his rough moments. There's one particular thing where Ricky Gervais is in his house to do a bit, and they hadn't really met before or worked together before, and Gervais is being silly and goofy, and he's like, can we just not do the jokes right now? And Gervais looks like, I'm sorry. He just looks so awkward and uncomfortable, and it's funny in a holy shit, this is terrible kind of way. But it's painfully, awkwardly funny, and just like, oh god, you feel bad for Gervais watching it. Like, oh, okay, but it's so good. It's so good all the way through, and they even take you to his memorial service, which is in this theater, and a lot of comics and different people got up and gave eulogies. Judd Apatow, of course, he set up the whole thing, so he did a eulogy, and there were jokes in it and stuff. And then there was Kevin Nealon. His eulogy at the end of the thing is absolutely hilarious all the way through, but with just filled with love. And him being mentored by Shandling as well, and I think I mentioned him as one. And then there's a monk that gives a little eulogy at the end as well and says some poignant stuff. So I'm going to say right now, if you watch this, both parts, I was just edge of my seat, because Shandling's a guy I've been watching since I was a kid. It's Garry Shandling show. Absolutely blew my mind. It was so weird and different, and he talked to the audience. You're talking to a guy, or he's talking to you from his sitcom, and he lives inside of the sitcom, basically. One of my favorite all-time bits, and now that I know more about the DVD releases of It's Garry Shandling Show, there were 4 seasons, I believe. Shandling went back and did a ton of commentary and behind the scenes and stuff like that. He even brought back his ex-fiance, who he had a bad parting with, and they did stuff together for the DVD and commentary. That might have been for the Larry Sanders DVD, because she was on that show. I don't know if she was on It's Garry Shandling Show at all, but no, it was for the Larry Sanders DVD. But I mean, for all those things, for the re-releases, he had to have everything perfect. So I really want to see this stuff. But one of my favorite moments, well, there was one where he got like drunk or high or hypnotized. I don't remember what it was, it's been so long. But he ends up stripping naked, and he's wearing a fuzzy black dot over his crotch. And he says, oh, thank God I got my dot back from the dry cleaner. And they showed a clip of that in the documentary, and I was like, yes, I love that one so much. And another one where his girlfriend moves in, and she's vacuuming. And back in the olden days of television, when you would vacuum, it would cause static on your TV. No idea why. I still can't figure out how that is a reality. It disrupts the signal to that. But she was vacuuming the living room on the show, and there's static on the TV, and I'm watching it, and he runs like, oh, honey, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just vacuuming. He goes, yeah, you can't do that. It makes static on the TV. I was like, what the fuck? It was part of the show. It was just, it changed television. And, Larry Sanders' show was about behind the scenes of a Johnny Carson type who was like, last in the ratings of all the shows. And it's so amazing. It's about personalities, and it's really about him in a way. But I don't know. He was just he's done two of the greatest shows on television. And then he did stuff in movies and things like that. He was in the Avengers movie. He was a senator that was part of Hydra. I wish they could have explored that more, because that would have been interesting. But he obviously won't be in Infinity Wars and that kind of stuff, because that filmed after he died. But unless they got some, it would be kind of interesting if they have some kind of footage that they can use for him, and just have him just a tiny little moment, tiny little tribute of Garry Shandling in there. But who knows? We'll see. But it's great, and you find, and I'm hearing other people say this too, you find a piece of yourself in him, something you can relate to throughout this, and it's really amazing. I stared at this thing for 3 hours. It was phenomenal, and it's broken into two parts, so I watched it 2 separate nights, but I couldn't get enough of it. I'm probably going to watch it again. It blew my mind how interesting this guy is, and as I'm coming up on his hometown here, Tucson, I will raise my Frappuccino to him. But I think everybody should watch the Zen Diaries of Garry Shandling. It's one of my favorite biographical documentaries that I've ever seen. It's really amazing, and great work, Judd Apatow. It's the love in this thing from everybody is beautiful. So go see it, go watch it. Anyhow, thanks for listening. Always appreciate it. Head to bunny17media.com. Use the code CHC. Get 15% off of any books there. And that's it for me. Watch the Zen Diaries of Garry Shandling, and I'll see you next time. Find more Cinema Head Cheese podcasts and reviews at cinemaheadcheese.com. Tweet us at CINHeadCheese. Listen to every Abnormal Entertainment show on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, our YouTube channel, or anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. And don't forget to visit abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.